You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Bulldog Hour's 4th season. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting next to me is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I know we've talked about the show and some of the topics that are on this show specifically, but this is the last one of this kind for this year, and I guess part of this show is the first of many, I guess, in terms of previewing teams and things like that. But we've reached that time. Yeah,
we are here. It's official. Football season. We haven't done a live show in a few weeks. We've posted some with a lot going on with player interviews, assistant coach interviews, but we're here tonight live to take feedback and have some interactivity for those of you watching on the variety of platforms that we're streaming on now. I think you can find us on Facebook Live, Twitter's Periscope, Ustream, YouTube, Mixler, that's audio only, and all of that, it can be found on bulldoghour.com. And hopefully we can see you watching the show in terms of you leaving comments about what we have to say about the Wilson football team here in middle August 2018. Heat week over, training camp done, scrimmage completed. And that's the only one they get, because now it's go time. Monday, August 20th, tomorrow as we record this, is the start of preparation for, which I guess is technically still being called week 0, but for all intents and purposes, it's week 1 for nearly every school, I think, in the state of Pennsylvania in terms of high school football.
Yeah, that makes no sense, but
well,
I'm behind it if it annoys other people, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, last year at this point, I was like, it's not week 1 because Wilson doesn't have a game.
Right.
That's all I care
makes
about.
Sense.
That's all I care about. So last year it was week 0.
A bit of a Wilson-centric show.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're coming here for like strictly PIAA broad topics, no, this is about the Wilson football team. So you'll need to move along or come back another time.
Stay.
Yeah, no, we want you to stay.
You haven't found what you're looking for, unless actually you found what you're looking for. You just didn't know it.
You didn't know it. Yeah. You didn't know it, right? So, yep, a good time here as the high school football season pretty much, it's ready to go, and people have been excited for a long time, both of us included, and now we're just 5 days away from the kickoff of the first game, which is in the Harrisburg area at Central Dauphin Middle School. That's where Landis Field at Speed Eversole Stadium is located, and that is where the Wilson Bulldogs will travel this coming Friday night to open their season against the Central Dauphin Rams. And in just a little bit, we will have a preview of that game. But first up, we got to take care of our normal business, which is thanking our sponsors, those helping us here to keep the mics on, and that is my dad, as always, at May's Sandwich Shop, Andy Herr, Matt Cruz, and 2 anonymous donors. We appreciate all their support over the years. Again, we're in year 4 of this show. Some of them have been with us from the beginning. Others have jumped on board in the past few years, and even another one just recently in the last couple months. So there's always a lot of gratitude from Justin and I helping us out in any way possible. We appreciate it completely. And, if you're interested in supporting the show, there are ways to do that. And sponsorship and advertising potential is there. You can contact me, Joe, at bulldoghour.com, or go to bulldoghour.com for the PDF file of sponsorship and advertising opportunities that we have. And we take the in-kind donations. Visit bulldoghour.com. The website is a great reference for Wilson football fans, the community, and info on the show. And, well, Justin's favorite thing.
Yeah, like and share, right?
Just spread the word.
Yeah, spread the word.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go to the website.
Yeah, and like Joey mentioned, even though we have a few episodes under our belt here this season, as we get into the season, that's when, we start getting to a lot of the things that people want to see, especially like next week when we're at Central Dauphin. That's quite a bit of a drive. Not everyone's going to make the trip. We hope everyone makes the trip. But when you tune into the show, eventually when we're doing highlights and things like that, you can kind of make sure you're getting your word out there if you want to have a sponsorship or advertising or something like that. So there's a lot of potential to reach the viewers and contact us, and we'll make sure we can find what works for you.
Yes, definitely. So hit us up, talk to us in person, email us, go to the website, use social media. Whatever you want to do is good to us, and any way you can help is greatly appreciated. All right, so our next live show, well, it's actually next Sunday, the 26th. Why is it next Sunday? Well, because we have an actual game to talk about. So we are going to recap the game against Central Dauphin and then preview the Labor Day showdown between the Bulldogs and the Mustangs, which will be at the friendly confines of John Gursky Stadium this year.
That's good. It's been a little bit since we've had a game there. So
yeah, so it's been too long,
Yeah.
So we are looking forward to that show next week, episode 6 of the 4th season. Again, next Sunday, August 26th, 8:30, right here on the variety of social media platforms, recapping the CD game live and looking forward to the Mifflin game the following Friday. Again, a couple of fundraisers going on for the program and the Wilson Football Tradition Club. Game and season video sales and continued DVDs, digital on USB drives. Again, BulldogHour.com under the merchandise. That's where you can get that. And second fundraiser is the jersey sale. Still ongoing. I actually do have, I think, 1, maybe 2 jerseys from the 70s and 80s that have Bulldogs across the back. I think actually the only one left I have is 56. So if you wore 56 in the mid 70s through 1990, I have a white jersey that you may be interested in. Not expensive; they're $20, and if it's something that you wore, 30 to 40 years ago, it might be cool to have.
Absolutely.
A few decades later. So. Again, you can check BulldogHour.com for information on the jersey sale, or just send me an email, joe@BulldogHour.com, or WilsonBulldogsFootball@gmail.com. Lastly, the Tradition Club event is fast approaching. The RSVP for members, whether it's players or coaches, of the fall 1978, 1993, and 2008 teams, that ends this coming Friday. So when the 2018 Bulldogs are facing the CD Rams, and if you remember one of those old 3 teams, you need to get an RSVP. And if you're going to come to the event on September 7th, when Wilson plays Spring Forward at Gursky, we'd like to welcome you back and celebrate some big anniversaries for those teams, 40 years, 25 years, and 10 years. So definitely get those in again to Hallie Vaughn at HallieVaughn@AOL.com or me at WilsonBulldogsFootball@gmail.com. So, training camp happened this week. Yeah. It was only a week long. Now, it's still kind of 2 weeks because they have that heat week at the beginning, but it's not the same thing as the 3-a-days. No. And now they only get 1 week of 3-a-days because this week is abbreviated and they're entering a real game. So it's a little bit of a different...
You can't really run them ragged this week and recover and prepare the following week because you've got a game on Friday.
And Wednesday to Friday, I know the educators, that starts up again. So schedules get shifted. You start working after school hours, what will be after school hours for the students and coaches. So, this is go time. It's ready to go. But I was up at practice a couple days this week, was able to take a few pictures and take in the sights, talk to the coaches, talk to the players. All around good time. Everyone seemed to be really enjoying it. So I think 2018 season starting off on the right foot for sure. And that led up to the scrimmage, which just happened yesterday. Justin and I were both there. And, it's a scrimmage. You never want to go in either direction, either extreme, positive or negative, because it is just a scrimmage. And I think the thing that for me always underlines that is how little the starters play as a collective unit. I think altogether in the 10 and 10s, 10 offensive plays, 10 defensive plays, they rotate through that twice. I think what you expect to be the ones on both sides of the ball for Wilson played like 5 plays.
Yeah, and it was interesting, if you stick around later in the show in Coach Dahms' interview, we interviewed him before
Yeah.
this scrimmage, obviously, but he actually talks about that the unique position of only having the one scrimmage this year, and kind of how that's going to be different, and some of the things they were have to think about when going into that, because they've typically had the two scrimmages, and it's just a different animal for them to kind of figure out this year, and so they I kind of kept that in mind as we're watching the scrimmage yesterday. Some of the things that they usually get to look for over 2 weeks that they're now looking for in one single week. So, like you said, nothing, glaringly, great or awful or anything like that, which is exactly kind of what you would expect. One of the things I saw, and this isn't necessarily Wilson related, but the bigger of the backs that was getting some carries for Parkland yesterday, I think it was in the live part, hobbled off and then had ice and was on crutches. Now, that's pretty precautionary, like standard precautionary steps. Like, I'm not saying he had a severe ankle injury or anything, but those are the things, honestly, that you look to avoid the most in the scrimmage. Like, if everyone's like walking off and not dinged up, that's a positive already.
And Wilson didn't avoid the injury issues with someone hurting their hand, and we also had, I think, a quad injury as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully they can heal up over this shortened week leading up to the Central Dauphin game. And Wilson also was out 3 other starters that didn't suit up at all because of lingering issues. I don't really like to get into names and injuries. No. These are kids we're dealing with. So just being said, like, they're missing 2 offensive linemen. They're missing a wide receiver. Those offensive linemen also play defensive line. And then you have a wide receiver cornerback go down and a reserve running back go down. So a little bit of attrition there leading up to the scrimmage and during the scrimmage. Hopefully everyone is healthy and ready to go for this game this Friday. But I think overall, compared to what happened last year, especially in the secondary, I think entering the CD scrimmage, the CD game after the Parkland scrimmage, I think they're about, the coaching staff is about where they want the team to be.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some good things on Saturday.
Mostly defensively. The defense flew around.
Defense played really well.
Especially when those ones and those key contributors or those key reserves were in there. The defense looked really, really strong. Yeah.
And then, I forget where I was going with that.
Well,
but the defense did look strong. Kind of both the broken up sessions and the game situations, or whatever you want to call it, the live situations like later. I was pleased with kind of what you saw, and because you talk about it, you get some generic coaching before those, but you're not game planning the way you would for an actual game, obviously. But yeah, I really like the fact that it's against Parkland too, who has some depth, and they have quality players, and they're a quality program, and you're gonna if the kids aren't ready to play, you're gonna see your needs, and we're also able to do that. We were able to see some things that we need to work on, and that's obviously a key, because it's before the season has even really started. You don't want to be peaking middle of August. That's never a good thing. So while you saw good things, there's plenty of things to work on. Hopefully we can straighten some of those out and start improving, and start with that this coming week.
I was told before the scrimmage that Parkland was ranked 4th in the state at 6A, so a pretty solid opponent to match up against. Again, very little, if any, game planning from either team versus the opponent. So there's not there's some things to take away, but nothing to get overly excited about, overly worried about.
And yet again, don't get me wrong, we talked about this earlier, or we joked about it yesterday, I think, towards the end of the scrimmage. We were just saying how it would be great to get to play Parkland,
Right. Yeah.
And that'll be a few months from now.
Right. That would be
it would mean a success for both teams.
It would be an incredible success, because it couldn't happen until Saturday, December 8th in Hershey for the 6A state championship.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, if Wilson saw Parkland again, I think both teams would be okay with that.
It would be funny it would be awesome, obviously, for many, many reasons, but it would be kind of ironic that the East champ would be further west than the West champ.
True. Yeah, but hey, that's the way it works out with the uneven distribution of higher level classified schools. So, Yep, that's the way it works sometimes. But overall, decent scrimmage. Defense looked really good. Offense showed moments. We saw actually more Elijah Morales than we saw Avante Lockhart, but I think that was by design again for, to keep everyone healthy. But I think you'll see both of them in key roles this year.
Absolutely.
Which we heard Paul Roberts from WU.
I was going to say,
pointed
you've kind
out.
as the media cycles have been rolling through West Lawn at practices, you see their updates, and they've kind of hinted at that, or not so subtly hinted at, be on the lookout. Like Avante is the guy, I say the guy that people are looking out for. I think people that know the program are looking for it, but not necessarily until, outside the program. I don't know how many are going to be aware of him, just because he got some time last year, but it was in limited action. But when you look at Elijah Morales, he's kind of flying under the radar too. You know what? That's not always a bad spot to be in, because we looked at it last year. I mean, and it was true. We talked about it pretty much every episode last year. As Iggy went, the team went, right? If Iggy had a big game, team had a big game. And sometimes it was just crazy, ridiculous plays. I think about some of those receptions he made at Springford last year. They were ridiculous. But they needed Iggy to get it. But you hope that the running back situation this year can develop into a solid as well.
Last takeaway from the scrimmage, and we knew this and we've talked about it a lot over the last year pretty much, is that this team is young. This team has a lot of juniors and a few sophomores playing key roles. So what you see this year is going to be hopefully great, but the future is bright as well. So, I don't want to look too far into the future, but just knowing what Wilson will have back next year, that's also a good sign for the program as well. Yeah. So we like to acknowledge that from time to time. So quick look at the 2018 schedule now, as we now can check off the first three, which is crazy to think about, but those first three are done, and we're working our way into the bottom third and then that middle section, which is the meat of this Wilson season this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, again, this Friday, August 24th, at Central Dauphin. All right, so let's talk about the Rams from Central Dauphin a little bit here with our preview here on the Bulldog Hour. And make sure we've got all of our notes ready to go.
There we go.
All right, everything good to go. Okay, so the Central Dauphin Rams, what's their story? Well, last year, a bit of a down year, much like Wilson last year. Most programs would be so thankful for an 8-4 season and a trip to the district playoff semifinals. But that hasn't been the Wilson way over the years, especially with Coach Dahms at the helm. 8-4 for many people just wasn't acceptable. And I think the players would tell you that they were disappointed in that result. Right. Which, just think about 8 wins.
You doubled. You had twice as many wins as you had lost.
Right. 8 wins. So many programs, 9 out of 10 programs probably would be so thrilled with 8 wins.
Yeah.
How many teams throughout the Berks League, the LL League, all the sections would kill for 8 wins a year?
The majority.
So, but that's not what Wilson was used to. So it was a little bit of a sore subject around the community, and I love Coach Dahms talking about all the media interviews. He said he did more TV interviews at LL Media Day this year than he's done in the first.
Yeah, he said he used to just kind of go up there, get to sit there, and I think he said there's been multiple years where he didn't get any invites back to where they do the TV interview part because no one really wanted or needed to talk to him. He said at least that's their opinion, not his. But he said this year, they were lined up. Everybody wanted to talk to him about it. So it's kind of interesting how, you change things up a little bit, and now all of a sudden there's a story. And we've kind of talked about it. I know in your preview, that you wrote for one of the sites, kind of alluded to the fact, and you see this lots of places, but there's another top dog right now. And they earned it last year. So
I mean the Manheim Township team last year was probably the best team they've ever had in their history. A generational team, a lot of talent across the board, And they ran the gauntlet. They didn't get this as a pushover year. Now,
No.
people would say, "Oh, well, Wilson was down a little bit.
Yeah,
Central Dauphin was down a little bit." But they had to beat both those teams twice.
Right. They beat Wilson. Like, Wilson had 4 losses. They'd be like, yeah, they beat a 4. Yeah, but 2 of them were them. Like,
and then they had to beat Cumberland Valley.
Right.
Who is probably the most prestigious team in District 3 in terms of championships, appearances, and victories.
Oh, and then they're, they played Pine Richland.
Yeah, and they played them tough.
They played them real tough.
And Pine Richland won the state title.
I think they sacked the quarterback more than he had been sacked all year in that, one game. Like, it was, they took it as far as, many of the teams in the East or in District 3 were able to take it the last few years.
Yep.
So, that was a great team. So, like you said, it's a little different. Hopefully, you hope you can rebound and kind of build off of some of that experience. Some of those young guys you mentioned that were looking to get experience this year got experience last year,
did.
which is crazy.
Trial by fire,
right? So, so you have some of that going, but you look at Central Dauphin, it's unlikely they're going to have a repeat of last year.
They are the mid-Penn's Wilson.
Yeah.
Them or Cumberland Valley.
Right.
But really, at least in terms of league titles, it's Central Dauphin because Central Dauphin's won 7 of the last 9. Now, I'm sure there's ties and shares in there and whatnot. But Central Dauphin is just like Wilson in so many ways.
Yeah.
But, 6-5 last year. What are the expectations this year? I think they're still looking at it as a bit of a building year, and maybe some at Wilson would say that about this team. So I think it's another interesting, evenly matched game, and we'll get to that shortly. But for Central Dauphin, some of their biggest names did move on, just kind of like what you would say about the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Maybe their biggest was the play of special teams ace, the kicker, Ethan Van Buskirk, was money. He won them games or kept them in games, or they always knew they had the potential to win a game late because of how strong his leg was. They lost their quarterback again, Brady Straub. Their big running back, Mike Wise. He was crazy. A big lineman in Bo Heschler, and the massive, so tall Grant Smith, who single-handedly basically defeated Wilson last year. We couldn't cover him. We couldn't stop him.
Yeah.
He's the one that put the game out of reach, that when we mounted our comeback, when the kids started to fight back and get so close, Grant Smith's play earlier in the game was kind of the difference maker. Yeah. But they do have some back, including a lot on defense. They have 8 coming back on that side of the ball, including 3 of their 4 linebackers, and 3 of their 4 defensive linemen, and then 2 defensive backs.
So you're saying a few minutes ago when we were talking about how, Wilson is a little bit of an unknown in the running game this year, even though we know and we like what we've seen from Avanti, and we saw a good amount of stuff from Elijah Morales yesterday at the scrimmage. They get to go against a returning front 7.
Essentially, yes. So it's
awesome.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So
that's how it's going to go. Those are the types of things, though, that don't always happen at a Central Dauphin or a Wilson because, think about that. Like, you had all those guys playing last year, but we talked about last year was a bit of, you use the term rebuilding. It's not the same for everyone, but, again, for a team like this to return that many guys is kind of crazy.
They've got about 5 starters or key contributors back on offense from last year. Senior fullback Adam Burkhart, tight end Willie Schuler, and then 3 offensive linemen, 2 of them seniors in Bollinger and Laporte, and then a junior in Bryce Toman. So a little green on offense, where you would probably say Wilson's defense is the better of the 2 units right now. So you have kind of, young or inexperienced offenses going against some veteran defenses. So
in week 1 with 1 week
right,
less practice.
Right, and they always say the defense is the head of the offense. Yeah. So this could be one of those, who gets to 14 first? I mean, really, think about it. Based on what's coming back for both teams and how early the season is, this could be a low-scoring affair.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't surprise, because when has a Wilson Central Dauphin game really been, an explosive offensive performance? When was the last time any of the teams scored more than 4 touchdowns?
I was going to say 28 has kind of been a magic number the last couple of years.
Yeah, and we'll get to that because I have the recap of the series coming up in a little bit. But so, again, Central Dauphins, similar to Wilson in both the long and short term for both potential and development. The likely starter for the Rams this year, I believe, is going to be senior Noah Hoffman. although there's a chance that an underclassman could split reps or eventually win the role. But at least to start the season, I expect it to be Hoffman. And CD, though, is all about the run game. And they're not the Mifflin or the Berks Catholic type offense, but they do love their lead, power, sweeps, and traps. And that play action pass off of that is
because
killer.
they run it effectively. Like,
so destructive.
Right, yeah. Well, that killed us last year.
Absolutely.
The tight end streaking down the field on play actions got us.
And their defensive mentality, well, they run a 4-4 just like Wilson. They don't blitz a lot, and they're essentially a bend, don't break. We'll give you the 2 or 3 yards or maybe the short passes, but we're not going to give up the big play. So if Wilson's going to score,
when you return 3 linebackers,
and 3 linemen,
right, you're going to make tackles.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to you might get that yard or 2, and now you're stopped, and now you're stuck at 4th and 3. You know, like that's kind of their mentality.
So they're they might bend, but they're not going to break. So Wilson will earn every point they get Friday night. It's going to be a tough go for sure. So analysis and expectations for the game. Obviously, last year it was big plays and mistakes is what doomed Wilson in 2017.
Yeah,
they gave up those big pass plays.
A bit of the frustrating thing there too was this was week 3 last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, because we opened with Mifflin. We went to Springford, and then the home opener was the Central Dauphin game.
By week 3, you would hope to see fewer of the mistakes, or lapses. Some of that Central Dauphin making plays. Like I remember there were some times where we had the tight end covered last year, but we've got a shorter guy, they've got a tall guy who just went up and makes the catch. That's a tough kind of thing to try and make sure you can do, handle there. So being in week 1, how's that going to go?
Yeah. We talked about that with the assistant coaches last week. Wolver and Covell talked about, the moving the schedule around and how is it opening with Central Dauphin versus normally opening with Mifflin.
Right.
And actually those first 4 games, and we touched on a little bit, the different offenses Wilson's defense is going to see the first 4 weeks is crazy. Yeah. But CD's up first, and it's going to be a tough, close game. Honestly, this is a game, and Justin and I will never, ever do predictions, so don't ever expect that from us. But
maybe in the car ride to the game.
I mean live on the air.
I knew what you meant. I was just being difficult, as I always am.
But something like, this is going to be a 21-10, 17-7, 14-10. This is going to be a low-scoring, close game. I would not expect a blowout in any way for either team. I don't expect a close, high-scoring game. Yeah. I just think it's going to let's look at the series history. So this is the 10th meeting between the teams. Wilson and CD had never played until 1996, and their first 4 meetings were all in the playoffs. Right. There were no regular season meetups, non-league games. 96, 97, 02, and 2011, again, all in the District 3 4A playoffs. And through the first 9 games, there was only ever one real lopsided game, and that was back in 1997. Right. Central Dauphin beat Wilson 44-0, and if you know anything about that game, it was in Landisville in a rainstorm or the after effects of a rainstorm, and I believe Wilson fumbled 10 times. And that's not an exaggeration, I think. I'm trying to remember. I read the article when I was clipping it.
Right.
And I think Wilson had 10 fumbles. Now, I'm not saying they lost every one of those, but it was a messy, messy game.
If you look, only twice in the series history has the winning team essentially scored more than 28 points, and only 3 times total. Yeah. There was one where it was 35-33 loss.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, buddy. But that was 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Now we haven't.
Also, thanks.
We didn't play. Yeah. We didn't play them that many times early on. It was only in district playoffs, number of times in the championship. But then, in more recent years, we've played them, multiple times, or at least, kind of annually in this series, because it's a good test for both teams, and the way the district playoffs have been formatted more recently, back in 2002, and those teams, remember, you lose a game,
you're done.
You might not make the district playoffs.
Right.
That, how insane is that? Think of that now. If they only took the top 4, it was the opposite problem, and that's why they adjusted.
Yeah. I think 8's the right number. I think
In 6A, 8 is absolutely the right number.
Well, and 6A I think 8 in 4A may have been okay too.
Yeah, 16's probably the way to go in 5. Oh, you mean
I'm talking
sorry,
when
4.
it was 1, 2, 3,
yeah,
and 4.
no, I would agree. 8 was probably
classifications.
8 was good there. I thought you meant 8 now, and I'm like 4. That's kind of random that you would bring up.
No.
4 now.
I'm
yes.
talking about when
yes,
Wilson
8 was probably the way. 16 was too much.
16 was probably a little bit too much. But anyways, so yeah, this is the 10th meeting. CD actually leads the series 6-3, and there's not very many teams that can say they have a better winning percentage against Wilson, as in they've
especially
won more
when
games.
most of the games have been in the last decade.
Yeah,
you know, like
in the last 2 decades.
Right, like if you look at those teams, if there are teams like that
from the 40s and 50s, and
right,
60s.
right, it's some schools that
don't even exist anymore. Yeah, I go through the list of all, and I'm actually working on an updated list that's going to have scores and dates, so I can do a on this day in Wilson history
right.
and have like results from all the all-time games. Some of those schools that I'm finding, and I'll see like 3 schools merging to become the school I'm familiar with now, like Perk Valley. Was like 3 different school districts until like the 50s.
Probably each of those little townships.
Yeah,
and
well,
boom,
they all
together.
merged.
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy. So not too many programs can say they have a winning record against the Bulldogs, but Central Dauphin is one of them. And this game this year gets them to double-digit matchups. So that's kind of a start where you can kind of see some trend analysis going on. So Central Dauphin wins this one. It would actually be their 4th in a row against the Bulldogs. Wilson had even the series 3-3 when they won the district championship in 2014, 21-10 in Hershey. But then the next year, 2015, at Wilson, CD won by a point. The next year, CD won at home, 24-6. And last year, Wilson mounted a comeback at Gursky, but fell short to the Rams, 28-20. And now we're back at CD, and you can kind of see neutral fields. You know, you kind of have to, if you take those away, the road team actually is more successful.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if that works in Wilson's favor this year, but expect a tough, close game to open the season. And I pointed this out to Justin.
And if you look at the dates, they've never met opening week.
Yeah, this is the first time. No,
they've met the last week for one of the teams a number of times,
right.
but have not met week 1. So
yeah, and they will do so again next year. As of right now, Wilson and Central Dauphin will open the season next year on August 23rd, 2019, at Gursky Stadium. Now, I will throw in there that there will be a schedule change for next year. It will not be Central Dauphin, and it will not be Mifflin. And the LL says it won't be Manheim Central, so I think you can fill in the blanks for the likely schedule change in 2019, that the Bulldogs will be looking for a Week 3 opponent for personnel issues, logistical issues. They will be introducing a new Week 3 team, and that will be slated to be a road game next year. And as soon as I hear who that will be, which may not be until the end of this season, I will obviously let you all know. But Springford will be departing the schedule most likely in 2019. All right, so doing research for this game against Central Dauphin, I looked up District 3 at the highest classification playoff results. And it's amazing to know that of the 36 championship games played in District 3 at either 3A, which was the highest level from 82 to 84, or 4A, which was the highest level from 85 through 2015, and now 6A, in the last 2 years, either Cumberland Valley, Wilson, or Central Dauphin, or 2 of the 3, have played in every single championship game except for 8.
Wow.
Oh, and also 1 or 2 of those teams have played in every single highest classification D3 playoff championship game since 2008. You have to go all the way back to 2007 was the last time one of Wilson, CV, or CD wasn't there.
Right. And that was back-to-back years of, well, I guess you have
a team that we shall not name there. Yeah. But they lost, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But
in those crazy years.
Yeah, that was those transition years. Yeah. So I think wasn't it through 05? Was it still 4 teams or was it 8 teams then?
I think it was 4, but I think it was I don't know because State College is in there. So like
I think in 04 and 05 I think, or maybe 04, 05, 06, 07 they went to 8.
Those years.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's the dark ages for us in the Wilson football because we weren't around. Yeah, I think they bumped up to 8 teams in 04-05 and then 16 in 06-07, but it was a D3, D6 like crossover.
Right.
Like it competed with all of those teams.
Because the team that shall not be mentioned would have essentially won district title, essentially, but it was merged, and so there was an extra, what at the time became an extra game for the district title. And
yeah, I guess Mifflin was technically the D3 champ at 06, but it was a D3, D6 sub-regional or
because
sub-bracket.
State College is like the only.
Right, yeah.
like,
they're almost the only representative
right.
from there ever. And they beat Mifflin, so Mifflin was denied a district championship trophy. But I don't think we're going to cry about that. So
I'm all right with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. So Wilson's made 10 District 3 championship appearances, winning 7. Central Dauphins made 6, winning 3. And Cumberland Valley's made 21 of the 36, winning 13. So among them, 37 appearances and 23 wins.
Well, it's crazy because if you go, like, if you're just doing this by analysis, if you look, we have Central Dauphin on the schedule this year. I know Cumberland Valley is that high one, but we also have Manheim Central on the schedule. So you just drop to
5A or
5A or the
second
former
highest
3A. Yeah,
classification.
like the numbers are up there, like with those CV like numbers. You know, just absurd in terms of the number of championships and appearances and things like that.
And then you throw in like McDevitt or Lancaster Catholic, like you encompass that area of Mid-Penn, LL, and Berks. You pretty much have 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, like those, like if you had to pull out of a hat a team to win a title, it's going to be one of those 6 teams that I named. Right. The odds are high on that. So, well, without further ado, let's get to probably the main thing that most people wanted to hear tonight, which is our interview with Coach Dahms.
What we call a captive audience.
Yeah. Let's reel it in. So we did the preview of the game this week. Now let's take it back a couple weeks now. We did the interview with Coach Dahms the first day of Heat Week, which was Monday, August 6th, and we sat down with him for almost 45 minutes. So I think you'll really appreciate the interview. I think there's a lot of content there. We asked a lot of questions that people asked us to ask him, and it was a good time. We're always thankful for him taking the time on such a busy schedule to do this with us. So, without waiting any longer, let's get to that interview. So here's the Bulldog Hour's 2018 preseason interview with Coach Dahms. All right, so actually our last interview this year is probably the one that most everyone wants to hear, is that get to talk to Coach Dahms here before the 2018 season starts. And you're kind of going through a mini car wash here as I talk to Mike Drago and the 69 News, catching you on this first day of the heat acclimatization week. What's it like to be back here for what number season is it now? I know it's in the 40s.
This is 43.
43.
Yeah.
So a lot of changes since the mid 70s to 2018.
A lot of responsibility changes. Yeah, it's far more. In the 70s, you weren't allowed to do anything in the off season, so all we had was weightlifting. And then the week before we started camp, we did a real heavy conditioning week. And then we went to camp, but you weren't allowed to give them equipment. You weren't allowed to give them helmets. You didn't have any of that stuff.
When did that start to change in Pennsylvania football?
Mid to late 80s, it really started that they went from you can't give them anything to you can give them all the equipment, So they kind of did a 360 on that, or a 180, I guess, on that one.
So it's close to when they started to institute the playoff format.
Pretty much, yeah, about the same time.
I think it was like 82 when the district playoffs came in, and then 88 with the state playoffs, and that's where things really kicked into high gear then.
And then you weren't allowed to practice with your team. You weren't, the team could go out and do stuff, but now you can't have mandatory practices, but everybody has their organized practices in the off season. You have to stay ahead of the game.
Before we get too far into 2018, one of the questions that I asked the kids and the coaches that I've already interviewed was, what was the biggest takeaway from the 2017 season?
I think the disappointment of not finishing a couple of games. We've always been very, very good at the end of games. And, if you look at the Manheim Township game in the regular season, the Mifflin game in the regular season, the Manheim Township game in the playoffs, all three of those games, we had an opportunity at the end of the game to pull it out. And traditionally, we've been able to do that. And this past year, we didn't. And, as I look back on films and things like that, I really attribute that, we had an okay team chemistry last year, but, when the chips are down and, you have a team that's pulling together and has fantastic chemistry, they tend to pull it out. So we worked pretty hard this year in the off season on leadership and chemistry. And I think, we've got a couple of really nice team leaders, and I think, our chemistry's been good so far. Obviously, it's got to build, but it's been good so far.
Yeah, the senior group of players that I talked to 8 of them a couple weeks ago, and then I got to talk to a few of your coaches last week. They all mentioned that the chemistry and the leadership, the way the team is coming together, has been pretty significant and a lot different than last year.
And it's better, but obviously you don't know how that's gonna until you go through the hardships of a couple of battle-tested games. If you lose a game, how are they going to respond? That's going to be the big part. But so far, we're happy with where we're at that way.
So besides the loss of the senior players, we had a couple of players that we expected to see this year move on, as well as a few coaches no longer with us. Just let us know, what are those differences we're going to see this year, the absence of a few players and the coaches? Who's new to your staff?
Well, the players leaving, obviously, McFoy's the big name one. Everybody was waiting to see because of his speed, and he's going to Berks Catholic. It's going to affect us a little bit in terms of the outside running game, and him out of the backfield was going to be a factor. But hey, kids got to move on. They got to do what they want to do and what they feel is best for them. We move on from there. We don't cry over spilled milk. As far as the staff, obviously Jeff Brubaker resigned because he wants to watch his son play high school football. John Lorchak, who was with us several years ago, has taken Jeff's spot. He, along with Brandon Dahms, will handle the offensive line. Brandon does most of the work with the tackles and the tight ends, and John does most of the work with the centers and the guards. And I think, John was with us. He left to go to Exeter to be an to go to Reading to be an offensive coordinator, and then he was an offensive coordinator at Exeter for a couple of years and was at Spring Ford last year. So he has kind of built his coaching pedigree and gotten better at it, and he's all in. He's into it, and I think we're going to move forward. Kids will have to adjust because it's different coach, different style, but I think we'll move forward with that and be in good shape.
We talk about a little bit different style with Coach Lorchak, and I got to sit down and talk to him for a little bit. But is the offensive philosophy changing at all? Not just necessarily focusing on the departure of Brubaker and Lorchak coming in, but is there anything that we expect to see differently this year, or is it kind of the status quo from the past few years?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty much status quo. We're going to be 50-50. We're going to throw a lot of the short passes. We're going to run a lot of zone read stuff. I think our offensive line is physically as strong as it's been in a long time. So hopefully we'll be able to create some holes and run the ball well. That'll be big till our quarterbacks have an opportunity to mature.
How is the quarterback competition going? I know the two seniors are the ones that are expected to be competing for that spot. Is it leaning one way or the other, or is this something that's going to be decided throughout camp?
Both of them throw the ball pretty much the same. Heckman is deceptive in his reads. He's sneaky in his read part of the game. Butrick is a little bit better under pressure and avoiding rush, but until you put the pads on and go full bore, you don't know how any of them are going to react. So, they both have their strong points, and we're going to wait and see. That short preseason is going to be, we're worried about that part.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. But do any of the underclassmen have a chance to sneak in there, or is this a two-man race for sure?
Based on the summer, it's a two-man race.
Okay.
Almost mostly because of just knowledge base and understanding the offense. Williams, the junior is probably next in line because he understands the offense better, but he's a big step behind those two.
Okay.
And then the sophomores are, their heads are spinning.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk in the the media throughout the state of the ongoing discussions about a variety of things. Can you kind of touch on, first off, any rule changes that actually would impact the on-the-field game this year? Then we'll get into the PIAA stuff.
We haven't had our rules interpretation meeting yet. That's this week, but the only major rule change, and it doesn't make any sense, is they threw the passer into the unprotected player category. Now, how they're going to interpret that, I mean, while he's throwing the ball, you're not allowed to hit him? I mean, he's always been protected once he's throwing the ball. So I don't know if they just did that to clear up language or what, but we'll find out on Wednesday at the rules interpretation meeting.
So it's kind of like the application of that, and at the highest level in the NFL, they're talking about that helmet rule. This is kind of the smaller level.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they really tightened things up last year with that unprotected player, and I didn't think it was a big deal. You know, for the most part, you know, you don't get many calls. It just took away the cheap shots, which is what you wanted to do. So, but other than that, no major rule changes on the field.
So at the PIAA level, there's been a lot of talk about fairness or equality, whatever term you want to throw out there, that is going into effect this year already in one aspect, and then possibly down the road with ongoing discussions from entities outside of the PIAA. First up, the transfer stuff. What kind of impact do you think that'll have on football as a whole, and what about directly here at Wilson?
Well, the transfer rules basically read that after your sophomore year, if you transfer, then you're ineligible for playoffs for 1 year. And then they have the 50% rule that if you play 50% of your games, you're not eligible for to play it if you transfer in that season. And then they have the 21-day rule that you have to sit for 21 days regardless if you transfer, even if you transfer, you know, after the second game or something. Those are all passed. You know, those are all there.
I believe they went into effect today.
They go into effect August 6th, today. I don't know how much they're going. You know, they have hardship rules so that, you know, the wording is such that you can no longer transfer. It used to be you could transfer for academics and all the other things. Well, all of that it specifically says you can't transfer. All those rules apply. You can transfer, but all those rules apply regardless of if you're transferring for academics, a better social, whatever. In other words, they took the if out of it. Before it used to be just you couldn't transfer for athletic reasons. They still have a hardship scenario in there, like if your parent, if their job, you know, was moved from one place to another and you're moving as a result, you know, you just apply for the hardship. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of, you know, if somebody's moving from Daniel Boone to Wilson, you know.
That was kind of where my not really misunderstanding, but confusion on the rule was, if someone's moving just because they want to move, why do you get to tell a student that you don't get to play in the playoffs?
I really think that they're going to have some legal battles on that one.
Okay,
You know? I mean, it's one thing to just do the transfer, but if a person physically moves their domicile, you know, where they live, not I'm living with my aunt or I'm renting here and here, but physically sells that house and buys that house, I think the PIAA will have to ease a little on that. But
well, they said there will be, exemption hearings and possibilities like that.
Absolutely.
But that was the one that came to mind immediately. Like, what if you just move school district? You only have one residence. Like, there's nothing going on where you're living with a family member. That just seemed really.
They're going to have to deal with that.
Draconian.
Yeah, they're going to have to deal with that because, you know, they're punishing a kid for somebody wanting to move from a starter home to a permanent home, you know, or something like that.
Yeah. Were you or someone from the district represented at the summit that they were calling the anti-PIAA summit about the boundary, non-boundary discussion?
Yeah, our principal and our athletic director were both.
And have you had meetings with them to discuss what went over? Are you completely up to date with that?
Pretty much up to date. I mean, I don't know that anything definitive has come out of it. They're waiting for someone to push the legal issue. The way the rule, and I think PIAA interprets the way the policy reads, which simply says they have to be given equal opportunity to participate. Well, if there's playoffs, I mean, if you're in 5A and you want equal opportunity, maybe you want to compete in 4A, you can't do that. So what's the difference if they have a playoff system that's comparable to every other playoff system? You know, and that's what they're trying to push for. And I don't know if anything's ever going to happen until there's until somebody wants to, you know, push it legally.
So PIAA just is standing the ground saying that the legislature says we're unable to do that, even though there's plenty of other states surrounding us that have no problem separating the boundary, non-boundary.
Exactly. It's the way the PIAA is interpreting the rule. Now, I would imagine that the non-boundary schools and the parochial schools have a pretty powerful lobby in Pennsylvania, so I'm sure that that's part of it. But, you know, my personal opinion, I don't really care. You know, it is an unlevel playing field, but we just look at those games as challenges. It means you're going to have a very, very rare, takes a very rare team to have an opportunity to win states with those things. You know, you look at when we played Pittsburgh Central Catholic, I coached Big 33 that year. 5 defensive backs were on the Big 33 team, all going to Division I schools. All 5 of their offensive linemen are going to Division I schools. I mean, you know, we're lucky when we get 1 or 2 kids, you know. But, you know, I always thought it might be interesting if they would sit down and say, okay, you can go to that school if it's within a certain boundary, which is the way the old Catholic school system was, or if you pay your own way. Not because they're all scholarships. Right. They're all scholarships. And if you look at it, I sit there and say, okay, how many of those kids are really strong academically? Or are you scholarshiping just as many academically as you are athletically? But if you look at it, you know, your St. Joe's, and I mean, they're great schools, but and, you know, a lot of those kids that are playing there are coming from underprivileged areas. So they're getting opportunity to go to one of the best academic schools and athletic schools for free. I don't knock their coaches. You know, it's just the system is wrong.
Right. And that's what the equity summit, I think they were calling it, was right. To kind of get a fact-finding mission and see what is it that we can do about this. And they're all about getting, and I think you were the first person I heard mention this, and it may have been the first time that we talked to you 3 years ago, was your solution was, let's see, four divisions or classes, whatever you want to say, in the playoffs for boundary schools and 2 for non-boundary. Sure. And that's what came out of the summit, too. That was what they would like to see implemented. Yeah.
Now they're going to run into the problem with what about Philadelphia? Because Philadelphia literally is a non-boundary school because anybody in the city of Philadelphia can go to any high school in the city of Philadelphia. You know, and there's, I don't know how many public schools, 90 or something?
That's a lot.
There's a lot. So, you know, that opens up that question. And then what do you do about schools that accept tuition students? You know, you have Pine Richland, who, you know, has had a Division I quarterback, the J-Raff guy.
Notre Dame now.
Notre Dame was from Ohio. And the one they had the year before, 2 years earlier that we played was from West Virginia. I mean, that's their driver's license. But Pine Richland accepts tuition students. So, you know, there's a lot of issues to deal with other than just, you know, that boundary, non-boundary. I guess you could just say everybody's non-boundary and open enrollment.
Well, that's one opportunity there. That's one option.
Well, the schools that have it say it's a major problem because the people transfer all the time.
So this is a long-term process. This isn't something that's going to be solved anytime soon. Yeah. It only got worse in the last decade, I think, opening up when Philadelphia was added in the mid-2000s.
Even when Philadelphia was added, they weren't football powerhouses. They only became football powerhouses in the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years. They just started, hey, let's bring in you know, the coach at St. Joe's makes $115,000 a year to coach football. And that's what he does. He's a recruiting coordinator. That's his position. Well, guess what? If I'm a recruiting coordinator, who am I going to recruit?
Athletically talented individuals that'll help you win.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's put a pin in that. I'm sure we'll come back to it in the future, whether it's this season or next. But let's talk a little bit more specifically here with Wilson and what's going on for the 2018 season. Something that everyone is finally on the same playing field in terms of schedule, with everyone starting in quote unquote week 0, which I guess technically would be week 1 now. I don't know how that works in the nomenclature.
It is, but technically you don't have to play that week.
Right. You still have the option.
You still have that option, but I don't know that anybody's not playing now.
At least everyone in the Wilson purview is now playing the first opportunity to play a real game, which for Wilson will be August 24th against in Harrisburg against Central Dauphin. Is there a challenge to you this year starting that week sooner, or do you like it because now you're on the same space as everyone else?
In terms of playing Governor Mifflin, it's going to be beneficial because I think that was a big edge. They played week 0 last year and we didn't. When you look at special teams and all the little things that you can clean up between the first and second week, they cleaned it up. Getting ready for week 0, I mean, 3 weeks we have a game. And we're not allowed to hit this week. Next week we'll hit and we have 1 scrimmage. And then the following week we're getting ready to play a football game. So the inexperienced kids are the guys that are going to really suffer because they don't have as much time to get ready. I think the other group of kids that gets hurt are the borderline kids to play. Because normally what we would do in a first scrimmage is we would play, all those seniors would get pretty much equal time, and the juniors that we thought were in the hunt would get equal time. And then we could sit down and evaluate on film. We could show them on film their strengths and their weaknesses. And you had that scrimmage, you could do that. Then the second scrimmage, the people you thought were going to be your starters would get 2/3 of the time, and the other guys would only get 1/3 of the time because you needed to get ready for your first game. Now we go into this, we don't have that first opportunity anymore. So we got to pretty much decide, who those 2/3, who's going to get those 2/3 reps, which doesn't give as much of an opportunity to the guy that maybe is marginal. It's not as fair to them, but, as I've been telling them from the first day of practice in spring ball, you have to show us this spring and this summer that you're ready, when the time comes. Otherwise, somebody's going to be in there getting more reps and it's going to make it that much harder. Doesn't mean you can't work your way into the lineup. You just got to work that much harder.
The first 3 weeks of the season are always the non-league slate, and then the LL changed things up a bit, and now your first 4 weeks are non-league, and the teams are identical, just playing them a little bit out of order with Central Dauphin first, followed by Mifflin and Springford. But instead of having that expanded league slate with someone like Lebanon, now you get to play Manheim Central.
Well, you know how we try to duck everybody and always play that real cake, non-league schedule. Central Dauphin, just one of the best teams in District 3. Mifflin, big rivalry, always one of the Berks League winner. Springford, is playoff team down in District 1 for the last 6 years.
Familiar with you guys.
Manheim Central, another cakewalk team. We dodge all the tough ones. But, it's funny because I wasn't really happy with that decision by the league.
Which was told to you, not asked.
Right. And I don't know. I can understand they wanted to move Lebanon down. I can understand they moved Effort down. So move them down 1 and bump a team up and, keep everybody playing 7 league games. Manheim Central doesn't want to play us. They said that years ago when we played them. They dropped us for that reason. They said they can compete with us. They're a very good football team. But because of our physicality, they're going to lose 1 or 2 players for 2 or 3 weeks or more. And, like I said, they don't have the depth to be able to afford that, even if it's just losing special teams players. So, but we have no choice. That's going to be our schedule for the next 2-year cycle.
Right. So my follow-up to that is then, and you kind of mentioned it and alluded it to, about how strong the non-league schedule is, and you're playing these teams all of next year as well. When the next talk for the following 2-year cycle comes up, do you expect to change because of how tough it is, or this is what we like and we're going to keep chugging along?
I think the first question will be, will the LL decide that there's teams that are ready to shift? Did Lebanon get back on the wagon and get things going? Did Effort to start winning some games? I think if they're starting to get it going, there may be a chance, or if enough people, enough teams say, this is. They have 9 league games and we have 6.
Right.
Because they brought
Conestoga Valley went down.
Yeah, but there was an
Octorara
Octorara
came
in. So hey, there's some things you can't control. That's out of our control.
So one last one. Well, a couple more left on the schedule because there's a couple interesting things coming up this year. But One of the ones that stood up when we talked to the players and your assistant coaches about it was having to go back to Manheim Township again this year. And that was just kind of an idiosyncrasy in the schedule of you're making your third trip there in the last year. I know you guys don't really have an input on the schedule process, but do you have any idea on how that goes about, how they determine?
I don't. I know every 2 years they
redo it.
Redo the, it's a different schedule. And obviously they have to set it up so that 3 of those games are home and 3 of those games are away.
Yeah.
And it's not just our 3 home, 3 away. Everybody's going to be 3 home, 3 away.
Well, it makes it tougher because Conestoga Valley leaving and Cedar Crest coming up, plus Lebanon departing, that threw a whole big wrench into the problem this year.
A lot of it. So. Yeah, we go to Manheim Township and we go to Manheim Central. So we're going down to the Manheim region into the Death Valley. And
you're also going back to McCaskey where we were last year, but last time
our only game on grass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you went there last year. But when we played Cedar Crest, the last time they were up, we hosted them. We hosted them this year, and the same thing with Penn Manor. Penn Manor was just here. I'm sure they're saying, "Why do we have to go back to Gersten this year?"
Probably not looking forward to it.
No. The last schedule bit to point out, to talk about, was the Gridiron Classic. It's coming up the week after the Manheim Township game in October, and I actually had asked you about it off the record last year after this interview because I had heard about it. It wasn't officially announced yet. And I know you've talked to the fighting staff for that video announcement, which was really cool. But what does it mean to you to be able to go back there as a head coach now? Because I know you coached there when Wilson was still playing there in the late 70s. Kind of full circle. You played there, assistant coach, and now going back as the head coach.
Well, I think it's going to be a neat experience for the kids. They've got that giant scoreboard in center field, which will be behind the visitors team. So our kids will see it all the time. Kids are going to be looking at the scoreboard all the time. We talked to them about the instant replay. I said I wouldn't want to be the official, but what they said was they're already set up. They understand the problem with the officials with that. So anytime there is a touchdown or a big catch, they will run it at game speed, but they won't slow it down.
Okay.
So that you're not going to see the receiver is definitely in. It's going to be game speed when they go. I think in a little bit of an attempt to protect the officials.
Yeah.
Because fans will get really nasty at that point. But it's going to be different. That part's going to be neat. It's going to be interesting if you go no huddle because the defense will be looking at the scoreboard to see the replay and they'll be running the next play. But we had to work out a lot of logistics. With camera crews and end zone cameras, coaching boxes, all that. And then I guess the one end zone with the swimming pool will be Wilson's end zone. Yep. And people can buy tickets there for $27, I think, gets them all unlimited food and into the game. And if they want to go swimming into the pool, and the Hempfield will have the other end zone. And hopefully, I think it'll draw a good crowd from Wilson just because of the novelty of it.
Yep.
And they asked, what about Hempfield? Are they going to travel? I said, well, if they're 5-2, then they'll have a big crowd. Or 6-1, they'll bring a big crowd and the novelty of it. But, if they're 2-5, then they won't travel. It's just the way it is. It'll be interesting. I'm a little concerned with the sod. And there's a little bit of unevenness where there's some places that are slightly going to pitch down or slightly pitch up. Very subtle. Not much different than a typical crown field in grass. But I'm concerned with weather.
Yeah.
If we get a lot of, deluge or whatever. Now, we're the only game that week.
Right.
Everybody else, the other weeks, I think there's 3 games.
Yeah, it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the first 2 weeks. And then I thought it had been scheduled Thursday, Friday, but it looks like you're the only one scheduled right now.
Yeah, we're the only one.
October 5th.
The 3rd week. Yeah, We're the only one. But I know they have, I talked to the people out there, and they have provisions that if it's really nasty weather, that they'll play in the alternate plan, that they'll go back to a home field or a turf field or whatever. It's really nasty because, if you get a deluge like we had Friday night, they won't be able to handle that.
No.
But they said if they had to, they'd resod. So they felt pretty comfortable. The field would be in great shape.
Who came up with that idea? Was that a Fighting thing?
I think it was a Fighting Phil's thing because they're returfing the whole field this year. And they thought, before they do that, obviously football's a lot harder on the turf than baseball. I think they thought before they did that, that might be a neat public relations thing, because if you go back to the 70s, 60s and 70s, virtually every high school team, with the exception of maybe Wilson, played either at Albright or Municipal Stadium.
Right.
And they used to play Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night.
Yep. 4 games right in a row.
And it was in terrible shape. The infield was the infield.
Mm-hmm.
You sank up over, if it rained, you sank up over your shoes in mud. But, field's going to be perpendicular to when it was then. And I guess the question was asked, somebody asked me, when's the last time we played, did we play our home games there? Or why have we always played at Wilson? And with the exception of 58 and 59, we've always played here.
Right, yeah.
58 and 59, the field, they turned the field. The field used to run, the field was over where the tennis courts are and ran parallel to Grandview Boulevard. And when they were redoing the whole thing and turning the field this way, that was 58 and 59. So the field was all torn up. So those 2 years we played at Municipal or Albright, I forget.
I think a little bit of both, depending on the opponents. Based on the research that I've been doing with the game films that I've been converting and stuff.
But they were the only 2 times that we weren't playing our home games here.
And having a school district, a field to play on. So Wilson last played, if I'm correct, at Municipal Stadium in 1979, when Muhlenberg was still using that as their home field. And actually 2 of your current coaches were on that Wilson team, Ernie Wolver and Paul Covell. So I got to talk to them about the last time they got to play as a player there, and now they're going to get to coach as a coach there. So I think I made them feel a little bit long in the tooth with that remark.
Yeah, well, we've got some old timers.
Besides, you mentioned the field issues that could come up. Is there any issues logistically from your standpoint of losing a home game here at Gursky? Are you treating it kind of as an away game because you're going to have to take buses and? No,
we're going to treat it as a home game. We're going to dress here, everything, come back here to shower and that. So it's almost like we just got a short hop, 15-minute hop by bus to get there. I was concerned financially because, obviously you lose the revenue, the gate, the concession stands and that, but I know Drew worked that out with them, what the revenue sharing is going to be. And they said that they feel pretty comfortable. They'll make just about the same amount. So
I know we're looking forward to it for certain. That's something that I've been excited about since I heard about it a long time ago. And then when you confirmed it with me off the record last year, I knew that was going to be a big point of the 2018 season.
I don't know how we're going to get all our championship flagpoles up out there.
You know what? I'll work on that. I'll see what I can do. So the other thing at an administrative level coming up was changes to the playoff format. They're with teams starting in week 0. That's actually now technically back to a 16-week season. And I know the District 3 champ at 6A will have a bye week, which is an interesting aspect. What are your thoughts about having a bye in the playoffs for whatever team represents the District 3?
Well, that's the kind of the weird part. Some teams are going to play 16 games, and some teams, if they make it to state playoff finals, and other teams will only play 15. When you talk wear and tear on the body, that one game is huge. I was glad when they went to it, they didn't decide to move the start of playoffs back a week. Because I'd rather have the bye after the district final because, let's face it, by that time of the year, you got 13 games under your belt, a scrimmage under your belt. You're physically, you've taken a pounding. Sometimes it's probably good to have a week. I mean, if you look at last year, if we'd had a week off before our last playoff game, we were down. We had 4 defensive backs starters that didn't play in that game. They probably would have been back if we had a week off. So, the pros of it is you get a chance to recover physically. The cons of it is we're not used to that. We've never played a season with a bye. So how do you keep the kids sharp and how do you set up your practice schedule that week? So that'll be a challenge for us, sort of like the challenge of getting ready for week 0. So from a coaching standpoint, we've got a lot of things. And we've spent a lot of time talking about, preparation for week 0. We're going to do a lot more this week than normal. You lose some of those 2-a-days, so you lose a lot of mental time. Lots of changes that we as a coaching staff have to deal with as well.
But besides that aspect of it, there's also the complete reorganization of the way the brackets play out when you get to the state playoffs. And now District 3 is back in the East, where we had been for a long time and then vacated for 11 or 12 years, where they sent us out west, having to play in State College, Altoona, and whatnot to get to that semifinal, the game to get to the state championship game. You know why? Did they ever say why they decided to do that?
Well, the reasoning behind it is they moved 11 and 12 out. Now, District 3, I think, has 17 6A teams this year.
Yes.
11 and 12, I think, combined have 23. So when we were only taking our 17 out, 40% of the teams were in the West, 60% of the teams were in the East in 6A. By taking those, you're moving 6 more teams out there and 6 less teams here. So it got a little bit closer to 50-50. I don't think it's 50-50 yet. There's still more in the East, but the number of teams, 6A and 5A teams, balanced out better.
Okay.
It kind of seems kind of weird taking them all the way from the East to the West, but
well, yeah, I mean, because it's Philly schools,
Philly,
city of Philadelphia,
right? Philly, Allentown, that whole area,
and then Allentown, all
Right.
going out there.
All
So it's
going
even
west,
they
but-
took farther east part of it out west, but put District 3 back
Right.
in the East, and now the District 3 champion, at least at 6A, whoever that may be, will get to play
District
suburban
Right.
schools, such as that you're seeing Springford this year, member of that.
Right.
Coatesville, I think, is probably the
Coatesville.
preseason favorite to represent them. That's quite
They're
the team
loaded.
they have.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's also home of the CB West and the Downingtown
Sure.
schools and all those. So there's a lot of great football teams to come out of there. So obviously it's not going to be any easier, but it's definitely a different type of team that you're going to see.
Well, we're also going to have an opportunity to go see them play
Right.
the week before we play them, because we'll be off and they'll be playing a game. You know, it also, you know, when you think about it, it'd be kind of nice. I mean, the distance between here and Coatesville,
Yes.
you know, both teams are going to travel, you know, half an hour.
Yeah. Well, when I talked to
Yeah.
your players and your assistant coaches, and we talked about the playoff reorganization, the first thing they said was, we don't have to travel as much, and that's all that really mattered. They're like, we don't have to go to Altoona. We
Right.
don't have to go to State College. We'll get to play somewhere, because whether it's Wilson Township, Cumberland Valley, Central Dauphin, Harrisburg, whoever represents District 3 is all in kind of this bubble, much closer to the
Yeah.
suburban Philly schools
No matter
than
how
we
you
are
look
to
at
the
it.
Whitfield or whoever else.
Well, you
comes out
think
of the
about
West.
it, if it's a Central Dauphin or a Harrisburg playing, they may play here.
True.
You know, if it's us, you know, playing, we're probably looking at somewhere down in the O&J, Spring-Ford region. You know, I don't know. But either way you look at it, a lot less travel time.
Has Wilson hosted a non-Wilson football game in recent memory?
Van
usually
Reed,
admit- I
Van
feel
Reed
like-
Lincoln Park.
I usually feel like Mifflin tends to be the host for a lot of things.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if
Yeah.
Wilson would have that
Well,
opportunity.
we've always been playing.
Or, yeah, I guess that would be,
You know,
that would be why.
they don't plan on it because we're typically still playing, you know. And once you get to the state level, well, we could obviously host a state level playoff game. You know, it all depends who's playing who.
The last thing on the schedule this year that I just noticed this, and I'm not sure there's any real change, but it was just something different from the last few years, at least that I can remember, is the District 3 championship games played on Friday night at Hershey, and it's always been Saturdays.
Oh, is it really? I didn't even look at that.
What's his name? Rod Frisco, that works for District 3, put out the master schedule, and so I believe.
Well, when are they going to play? Oh, because
they're 3 weeks in a row district championships, and so every game's being played on Friday.
Yeah, but five. Where's 5? When's 5 going to be?
5
played?
is
Friday.
later, the week after Thanksgiving, Friday.
Oh, did they go to 16 teams?
They did, yes.
Okay. And it
Yeah,
wasn't up on that.
The
so
6A championship is in the middle, so like I think it's like single A and 3A or something like that in the first week, then some 6A and 2A or something like that in the second.
Well, what are they going to? When are they going to? So they're still going to play 2 games that week.
Yeah.
But they're moving. Wow.
They must be moving something around earlier in the day, but I saw that the date was listed as Friday.
Right. That's new on me. I don't look that far ahead.
I better double check it, because now I'm wondering, like, did I misread that? But when I looked, I was like, wow, that's a Friday.
Yeah, I didn't even look. I haven't looked that far ahead. And the schedule I put out had it Saturday because I just assumed Bad on me.
Well, I will double check that because I don't want to be spreading misinformation, because we just talked about it on the show we did last night. When we put out the kid interviews, we talked about how a couple more changes to the schedule this year.
You know what? That doesn't matter to us. I mean, but like I said, you get the extra day of recovery, but you know, we're so used to going that Friday. It's
yeah. I think the bigger it must be 3A and 6A the same time, because someone from Why Missing pointed out that there wasn't like the playing field was level now, because Why Missing was in that controversy last year with where the location of the game and the day of the game and things like that. And someone pointed out that they're all being played on Friday. I think that's what kind of pointed out to me.
Well, then somebody's going to play Friday early, like 1 o'clock
afternoon,
or something.
yeah.
And that won't be.
This would be the Friday before Thanksgiving, like the Friday leading up to Thanksgiving week.
And that wouldn't be us.
No, I'm sure 6A would be set for 6 or 6:30.
Right.
I guess that would be the 3A team then. I think that's who was slotted with. Well, anyways, the last question we have, just to kind of get your take now on the currently dead Berks LL merger. That's, they kind of put a pin in that, put it aside, said we'll maybe come back to it down the road. What was your initial reaction to that news that came out in January? From a Wilson standpoint, is something that you see as a positive or negative? Is something you hope to happen?
I think it was good for football. I'm not necessarily Wilson football, because it wasn't really going to affect us. Not much, but for football in general, numbers in football have been declining. The movie Concussion gave us a really bad rap, which is more about the NFL avoiding what happened as opposed to concussions. And some of your struggling programs that are going 0-10, 1-9 every year, their numbers are dwindling in there because kids don't want to play. I mean, let's face it, when you don't win any football games, it's not as much fun. So what that was going to do is put, the 2 or 3 programs from Berks and the 2 or 3 programs from the LL into the same division. And now they would have had a chance, because now you're playing, all those teams are pretty much on par with each other. And those smaller schools would have had an opportunity to win some football games and maybe get football built up again in their schools. So I think the schools that really suffered are the small schools, because that would have really helped them a lot. Whether they went with 4 divisions, 5. I mean, I thought 4 divisions, everybody plays a 9.
4 made the most sense to me.
Yeah, everybody plays 8 league games, and then you have 2 non-league games. But I think there was so much argument or indecision over 5 divisions, 4 divisions, 6 divisions, and nobody could make up their mind, instead of just coming out and saying, okay, there's going to be 4 divisions, everybody's going to play 8 league games and have 2 non-league games. We're gonna go strictly by size the first year, first cycle. Here's what we're voting on. Maybe it would have passed, but there was just nobody could get a handle on anything. Is there going to be 5 divisions? Is there going to be 4 divisions? Is there going to be 6 divisions? Based on power, based on strength, based on size. It was, it's a shame. I think it would have been good for football, but I think too many people were looking out for themselves only, and not looking out for football in general. Of course, it would have made, I think the big schools are still going to play all the big schools. It would have made that next tier, the
4 or 5A or whatever,
whatever
you want to call it,
where there would have been a lot more difficult teams, because now you're going to have Berks Catholic in there, Manheim Central in there, Cocalico in there. The question of whether or not Mifflin was up or down in there. I mean, now you're going to have 5, instead of just having 1 or 2 tough games, now they're going to have 5 or 6 tough games. And I don't know.
I would hope if they were going to 4 that Mifflin was going to be up with us if they were going to 4 sections.
I don't know if they would have been. It would have been close.
Well, that would have definitely made things tough, because I was always assuming that if it was 4 9-team divisions, that Mifflin would have been one of the 9 in Section 1 or whatever you would call it.
And which would be good. I mean, for us, it wouldn't matter. We'd play them one way or the other. But, I mean, if you figure Penn Manor, us, Hempfield, Caskey, Manheim Township, Reading, and then there's a whole bunch that are going to be very comparable.
Lumped together.
Who would have been the bigger
Exeter
ones?
and Mifflin.
Exeter, Mifflin, Cedar Crest, Conestoga Valley,
maybe Warwick, but they dropped to 5A this year.
A whole bunch of them. Yeah, but those are all 5A schools.
Right.
big 5A
that's
schools.
true.
So, we would have been probably 6 5A or 6 6A and 3 5A or 7 6A and 2 5A or something like that. But
from what you've heard or your feeling on the discussions, is it something that you think they will revisit in the coming years? Because I don't
think so.
You don't think so? You think it's pretty much done?
I think it's dead. Yeah, unless somebody, pushes it again, and I don't know if anybody's going to push it again. Like I said, I think if they would have pushed it, this is what it's going to be. Here's the format. Here's the structure. Here it is. Boom. It would have had it got voted down like 25-2 or something.
It wasn't even close.
Yeah. I said that Joey, I think if you start seeing scheduling issues in the for LL schools like you've seen for the Burke schools the last couple of years, then I think it may start to come up again. But the small schools now with the realignment in LL, I think have 9 league games this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they overloaded Section 3 or whatever.
And those small schools never had a problem getting games.
Right. So like
it's Manheim Central getting non-league games.
So
it's
I think
us getting non-league games.
Yeah. Unless you see scheduling conflicts start to come up.
Well, Berks Catholic is facing that now because nobody wants to play Berks Catholic.
Right.
Yeah, well, they're playing Central Dauphin the week after we play Central Dauphin.
Right.
So,
and they're playing a team out of Maryland that's big team. So, it'll be interesting. I mean, Central, they went through that with Bishop McDevitt. Nobody wanted to play Bishop McDevitt, and they forced them out of the league. Then they forced them to move to 6A, or 4A at the time. I don't know.
There was just a Sports Illustrated article last week about a guy in Delaware who built up one of the teams in the Wilmington area, a private school,
and now
they were going to cut the team, and he talked them into keeping it, and they turned them into a powerhouse. But now no one will play them.
No, nobody will play them.
Yeah. It's all cyclical. I mean, it never sticks around. I mean, we see it every few years in the LL League.
Well, anytime you have non-boundary schools, you're going to have that.
Right.
People aren't going to want to play them because, Berks Catholic should be playing in Section 1. In Berks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It shouldn't even ask. It should have been yes, you're playing in Section 1, but they left it up to Berks Catholic and they opted to play in Section 2. Well, that shouldn't have been an option. I mean, it's a ridiculous. Some teams are probably going to forfeit to them again, like Kutztown did last year. I mean, if you have because they're loaded again. So if you have a team that you've got 30 kids on your roster and you don't have a chance of beating them, why play?
Yeah, it doesn't benefit anyone.
It doesn't benefit
in any capacity.
Your kids get crushed, and then you run the risk of a couple kids getting hurt, and then you get the next week where you maybe could win, and you're beat up. Yeah, it's tough.
Well, I think that's all we have for you. Thank you so much for taking your time here in between practices to sit down and talk with us, and we look forward to talking to you after victories on Friday night.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Thank
Coach.
You.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so you're stuck with just me here as Justin had to take off after the long program here this evening, but we think it was definitely worth it. We thought Coach Dahms gave us a lot of good information on the season, on the state of the PIAA, on scheduling, the team chemistry, and all that. It was a great interview, a long one, but a good one, and we again thank him for taking the time to talk with us, and we definitely hope to catch up with him after victories on Friday nights this fall. So I don't really have too much else to say, and we can wrap up the show here. Again, Wilson begins their regular season this Friday in Harrisburg at Central Dauphin Middle School. Again, that's where Landis Field is. Speed Eversole Stadium is at Central Dauphin Middle School outside of Harrisburg, and the game will start there at 7 o'clock. Just to remind you from milestones we touched on in the spring and earlier this summer, but defensive coordinator and outside linebackers coach Ernie Wolber needs 13 wins to get to 200 with Wilson, and the Bulldogs program is actually approaching 800 games played overall. We're right now at 789, which means should Wilson get to the D3-6A quarterfinals, which would be the first round of the playoffs, that would be Wilson's 800th game. So hopefully something they can achieve this season. What can you expect from us on game nights this year? Make sure you like the Wilson Bulldogs and Bulldog Hour Facebook pages, Twitter pages, Instagram page, websites. Again, hit up bulldoghour.com. I just put up a post on the Wilson Bulldogs football Facebook page, shared it on Bulldog Hour and on my personal Facebook page, a variety of ways that you can interact with the football program, with me and Justin, and just get news and information on the team. So check that out, and bookmark those links, follow and like those pages. Live game updates with photos and game video will be coming at you on Friday evenings. If you're interested in advertising and sponsorships, again, reach out to me. We'd like to get that wrapped up in the next few days. And again, post-game interviews with victorious Bulldog coaches and players. So I think that's everything. So we're going to wrap up episode 4-5 of the Bulldog Hour. Justin and I will be back live next Sunday, August 26th, to recap the Central Dauphin game and preview the game against Governor Mifflin. So for everyone at the Bulldog Hour and for the Wilson Bulldogs football program, I'm Joe Mays. That was Justin Raffoff. And remember, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.